Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome. This is the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Your host, Joey the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ, the idea guy Morgan. All right, Russ. So name your top challenge right now in educating your children on entrepreneurship.
Can I choose myself as the challenge?
Yes, that would have been first on my list. Not you for my kids, but me for my kids.
I think that it may sound weird, man, but as many different business ventures that you and I are involved in and coming up with daily, right?
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I got more LLCs than Ryan's got Legos. But when we get home, I really don't feel super motivated to just spend time talking to the girls or, sharing with them what we're doing a ton.
Well, what about like when they glaze over, when you're trying to have this like moment and you're trying to teach them stuff? Maybe this is just me, but I'm sitting there like, okay, girls, do y'all understand what just happened there? This happened and this led to this. And I'm trying to like explain some sort of economic situation. And they just like, like glaze over. That's a challenge for me.
Well, I think I struggle with how to simplify the complex concepts, right? I mean, I think I've heard it said best that I overcomplicate the simple. I think that's my Montgomery upbringing, my public school education, and I struggle with that. So maybe I'm not doing a good job getting it down on their level. We talk about on the show a lot that we want to get the cookies on the bottom shelf.
Yeah. And
maybe that bottom shelf for us as adults with experiences and vocabulary is low, but for kids, it's still, you need a scaffolding to get to it.
Well, and I think it's also how do you motivate them when it's really not real life yet for them? They're not dealing with how do I pay the bills here or the challenges when people come to Wealth Without Wall Street, they have something they're trying to solve, right? Well, our kids, they're not facing that.
They're dealing with a life of luxury, man. Like, what else could you do, right? I don't want to say that derogatory because I love my kids and they're strong learners. I think though that, there's something missing. And I say all of this just being real transparent with you today, Joey, is because I need better ways to help motivate them and teach them. And I think that's why I'm so excited to have Connor Boyack back on the show, because that's what he does, man. He takes conceptual ideas that are really high level and he breaks them down into illustrations that I know my 7-year-old we've even had in our podcast not too long ago, being able to repeat.
Yeah. And I love from our interview today, he shared with us just how much feedback he gets on a daily basis from parents to hear what are the challenges they're facing so that he can then create resources and other ways to help support parents and families who are concerned about this stuff. So I think that's cool because you and I may be facing something individually, but he's hearing it from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families. So that's why I love his resources. They really hit you exactly where you need it. We've been reading the Tuttle Twins book series with my girls at night, my 7 and 5-year-old. And man, they're begging me to read these books. And they're talking about things like The Road to Serfdom, these highly intellectual economic type books, but they brought them down to these simple cartoon books and they love it. They love the characters. They're like, hey, I want to read that one with the food trucks, and I'm like, okay, let's read that one again. So anyway, I think he's a master at making it simple. He's also really heightened it during this COVID crisis because he's hearing from more and more families that, man, I may consider homeschooling. What are some resources? How can I get there? Yep. And I thought that was really relevant today.
Well, if you're like Joey and I, and you kind of have that entrepreneurial bug and spirit, but maybe you're struggling to transpose that or pass that down to your children, then today's episode, I think, is going to be a good one for you, because not only do we have an amazing author, someone who is thought of really highly in the liberty and freedom movement. He runs his own think tank, but he's, as Joey said, has written several books, a lot of which our kids are involved in. Tuttle Twins. You can actually go to wealthoutwallstreet.com/Tuttle Twins and take action and buy some of those. I highly encourage you to do it. But let's get into this interview. It's going to be timely and something that I know I really appreciated. Okay, I've listened to at least 5 podcasts. I'm now an expert in the infinite banking process. Maybe not, but yet I would love to talk to somebody about it. How can they do it, Joey?
It's as simple as going to freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. You can sign up for a short 15-minute call to see if this is a fit for you, and you can work with one of our coaches to financial freedom. Welcome into the show. We have a favorite guest here, Connor Boyack, back on the show. Man, so glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, well, you're a celebrity in our house, Connor. I tell my kids,
I'm really popular with 8-year-olds.
I'm like, guess who's going to be on the podcast today? It's our favorite author. Man, if you haven't had a chance to read some of the Tuttle Twins books, I mean, Connor's done tons of different things, but as a proud parent, I've sat down with my children and we've gone through several of your books. I haven't gotten all of them. There's a few that have come out that I need to still order, like Atlas Shrugged. I think that was one that you have done recently. But whether it's The Creature from Jekyll Island, The Golden Rule, the
food truck
fiasco. That's a favorite in our house.
We just read The Road to Serfdom.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
SURFDOM.
Yeah.
That was
Surf
awesome.
at the beach. Yeah.
That's right. These are just wonderful tools for you to dive in with your kids and get them to understand some of the complex economic thought processes that are out there, but let them learn at a really low level. You probably heard my son Ryan talking about this the other day and his understanding of the banks and governments as the creature of Jekyll Island and all that entailed. But Connor, thank you for coming on. What have you been up to lately since we talked last?
Oh, well, just first, thanks for having me back on. I get amped up talking about this stuff, especially so in the past few months with all this COVID stuff happening. All these people are now, quote unquote, homeschooling, right? They're trying to figure out, what does education look like for my kid? And how do I talk to my kids about what's happening, in the world around us? We've got a pandemic. We've got an economic crisis. We've got protests. We've got, authoritarianism run rampant, all these things. What's the language that I can use to talk to my kids about that to help them make sense? And so our goal with the Tuttle Twins is really just to facilitate conversations. Like, we're teaching stuff along the way and new words and stuff, but it really just gives a working vocabulary to the kids and their parents so that they can talk about, principles, but also like hot topics and current events and make better sense of them. So it's something where I feel a sense of urgency, I guess, is the best way to put it, where my wife is always getting on me because I'm always saying yes to new projects, right? Like, yeah, I want to do that. And then I want to, do something else. But we're talking right now about what other resources can we create to just have more stuff, right? And so we're doing the kids books and the teen books and a family game and a curriculum. And we're just trying to think through what are the other things that can help parents, help families have, more content, more curriculum, to just give their kids that knowledge that really the schools aren't doing. So we're actively trying to plan through what else we can be offering to our community right now.
That's really cool. So out of all the feedback that you're getting in a time like now, what is the common thread that you're seeing that people are asking for? What's the main problems that they're facing?
That's a great question. Obviously the easy answer is it's very diverse. It's kind of across the board. But if I had to pick some common themes, one is that we're hearing from a lot of parents. Interestingly, our email support, our customer support in the past just week or two, they've been asking a lot of questions about racial justice, right? Because in the news, it's been a lot of these protests and Black Lives Matter and So a lot of parents are reaching out saying, hey, do you have diverse characters in your books? And how do you deal with this kind of stuff? So we actually just recently threw up a post on our social media featuring all the characters from our series of, different ethnicities and everything, just to say liberty's for everyone. And if, there's some who don't have liberty, then we all don't have liberty, because it's a, liberty and justice for all kind of thing. So that's been kind of a very recent thing that's really interesting to see how the kind of national zeitgeist, if you will, has trickled down into kind of our customers' minds. On the other hand, you have just all these parents who are really trying to embark, a lot of them, on this new homeschooling experiment. And I just heard the other day from a mom who was like, my kid goes to school for 6 or 7 hours, but in this like whole crisis schooling experiment, they get done with their stuff in like 2 hours. So why do they need to be at school for so long? And I talked to another friend of mine the other day, and he was saying, my kid is like the happiest he's ever been, because he's not being bullied, and he's not being, dealing with all the toxicity that can happen in schools. And so maybe I want to do something different. So it's really opening up a lot of maybe receptivity to alternatives. And so that's, again, why we're trying to be like, hey, like, look, we can support you. We want to help you. This is possible. Connect you with a community of other people like you. It's something very interesting to observe how these trends, I feel like, are accelerating. And past events, every day feels like a different year, right? Just so much is happening all the time. And so I think parents are feeling that too when it comes to what they want to do with their children and how they want to teach them.
Well, we relate, right? In the stock market world, people one day are like, things couldn't be better. I just made $70,000. Wait a second, I lost 120. What happened today? Right? But I think about what you're talking about when it comes to the homeschooling thing. They're seeing the benefits, right? Because with the COVID, what happened with the homeschooling is that the parents who had to work no longer could go to work. They're at home. And so, yeah, they are experiencing that. They are seeing the interaction. They are seeing their kids learn. They're learning with them a lot of times, right? We're going back and we're learning the math that we once didn't learn before.
Right. We got to brush up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely brush up. Like the old thing where you hear some of those people. I think like Ben Carson has a famous story of how how his mother made him read all these books and do all these book reports, and he found out later in life that she actually couldn't read. She was pretending to read what he had done. But yeah, I do think that there's this moment right now where parents have been experiencing that, where the kids were learning at home and they were there. Now they're starting to transition back out into the job. So I wonder though, how are they going to transition next fall, right? How many of those parents are going to say, well, how could I homeschool? Because right now I have a day job. I have a job that I leave the house and I have to go to. How do you address that?
If I had to offer an answer there, it would be that the silver lining, I feel like, in the dark cloud of all this stuff that's been happening, or one of the silver linings, is people are questioning the status quo, like in all kinds of areas of their lives, right? So we can talk about education of their children, or we can talk about finance, when you look at what markets have done and they're quantitatively easing the entire economy once again, right? Like there's so many things. Science, right? First, certainly coming on the heels of global warming, but now it's like, okay, well, are you counting all the people who have COVID, as COVID deaths, even though COVID didn't kill them, but they happen to have COVID? And coming out of the UK, we learned that they were double counting a lot of this stuff. And by the way, the tests that you have can have false positives. So what I feel like is that there's so much questioning happening right now, a lot more skepticism, healthy skepticism of people saying, you know what, the way we've been doing things before in whatever facet of life, maybe this whole situation has created such a mental interrupt, right, for us, where it's like, it's one thing like, last year, let's say something happens, but you just scroll past it on, Facebook, your life is normal, you go back to your life. There's so many like interruptions and things jarring us right now that I feel like it's an opportunity for people to really actually make some changes, because they're forced to kind of embrace the chaos and figure how they want to come out on the other end. So whether that's talking about their own, wealth management and entrepreneurship, right? Or it's the education of their children. I'm hopeful that there's going to be a lot more people who are willing to do things a bit differently in the future than they were in the past.
By the way, do you know any good podcasts that could teach about alternative things on the financial side of things?
Oh, I think I'm on one right now, but I can't remember the name. Oh, wait, it's on the wall behind you. Turn around, guys.
Well, no, I love that
awesome.
because what you just said was what I was wondering if you were going to say, but that is that entrepreneurship. I got off the phone yesterday with a guy who's a dentist, been a dentist for the last 8 years. He doesn't have kids yet, but he's starting to think about that. And he's saying, wait a second, if I start my own dental practice, and that was what his goal was, I'm going to be solely economically dependent upon my ability to go to work. And that means I'm not going to spend time with my family. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to homeschool. We had a pilot who has been flying for 20 years. And he's like, I'm tired of this, man. This is not what I want to do. I think you are starting to see this entrepreneur bug. And I really believe that the COVID, even though in all the craziness that existed there, it took the time where it slowed people down. And I think they had some time to maybe process different perspectives. And I hope coming out of it, I hope we see a larger group of people that are homeschooling, which I think then we're going to see a larger group of entrepreneurship happen because of that, be forced entrepreneurship, right? If I'm going to stay home with my kid and I had a job before, I got to replace the income somehow, that I'm going to create something. And I think that'll be cool. How are you guys, pointing to some of the books? Because I love your Tuttle Twins books. How are you guys showing some of that entrepreneurship to the kids? Because really the kids are learning from the parents. And
yes. Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's exactly right. Like so often it's the parents who are setting that example. But what I found in doing the Tuttle Twins for so long is that you have well-intentioned parents who aren't setting the example, but they want to be, right? Like a dad's working 9 to 5. Like, let's use the pilot as an example. You're a glorified bus driver. I mean, let's be honest, right? You're like a bus driver in the sky. I was getting on a flight a few months ago. That's when the thought occurred to me. I'm like, this guy's just like the bus driver. Like he's just cooler because he went to more school to like learn how to, do this, but you're just like shuffling people around. And I have my best friend's a pilot. I don't mean to knock pilots at all, but it's more about like, there are some people who are just doing the 9 to 5 grind, and that's fine. Like if that's where you've reached in life, no problems, no worries. You're putting food on the table, more power to you, especially if you love your job. But there's so many people who do want that flexibility in their life and who do want to embrace entrepreneurship. What I love about entrepreneurship and the way I talk about it is entrepreneurship is service, right? Because you're problem solving. You're trying to find ways to help other people. In return, they're going to, compensate you and enable you to continue to serve them. But really, you're just finding ways to serve people and help them. I mean, the pilot, right? I need to get from point A to point B, and it would take me forever to drive. They're serving me by putting me on their Airbus, and off I go. So there's so many parents who want to teach entrepreneurship to their children, right? They understand the importance. They understand the economic freedom that comes with it, and just the life independence and all those good skills. However, so many of these parents are not entrepreneurs themselves, right? And so one of our books in particular, the Tuttle Twins and their Spectacular Show Business, is all about entrepreneurship. It's all about starting a little small business, and it's about business plan and marketing and investment and risk and all this kind of stuff. And it's so fun hearing the examples from parents, because now you have, especially the moms, right? Because it's a lot of times it's the moms reading with their kids. And they're like, this is amazing, right? We do the activity workbook that comes with the book, and we put together a little business plan, and my kid is going to go do like a little door-to-door business or the traditional lemonade stand or whatever. And you see that the profit motive, right, starting to work in the 6-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 10-year-old. And mom loves it. Yeah, dad loves it, right? Because they know how important this is, that their kids are learning this stuff, being able to kind of embark on your own to be your own boss. So it's just, who knows what the future impact is going to be and how many will actually, dive into entrepreneurship. But man, when you're planting a lot of seeds like that, something's going to grow out of that.
Stallion, I love it when we get to hear what people would be doing if they got to financial freedom. The last one that I got to read, somebody said, I would be driving and picking up my kid every day from school. That motivates me.
That is why you need to be a part of the community that is seeking financial freedom. Go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. You can join for free today. Yeah, now we obviously haven't met in a while, so you've introduced something that Russ and I both kind of shook our head like, activity workbook. Wait a minute. We've got the books, and you actually just brought up a book I don't think I've read yet. I've read so many of them. I guess I missed that one. But tell us about the workbook.
So when we did our first book, the Tuttle Twins Learn About the Law, this was about 6 years ago. I was trying to figure out, like, how do we add more value? What else can we do other than this one book? And I was talking with a dad who's an entrepreneur himself, and he's like, I bought this book last year, and they gave me this little activity workbook that kind of a companion. It's just PDF. You could print it out multiple times for multiple children. Like, my gosh, that's genius, right? Because our books are all about trying to teach these values, these ideas. And what we do in our activity workbook is we have stuff for younger kids, right? Like fill in the coloring, like of the drawing and crossword puzzles and stuff. And then we have stuff for older kids too, right? You're doing a field trip, you're doing a letter to the editor, about what you learned in the book or things like that. And so what we do on our website, TuttleTwins.com, is that when parents buy the whole set of books, we've got 11 kids books now, we provide them for free all of the activity workbooks for every single book. Or you can go, you can buy them individually. A lot of people will buy the books on Amazon, right? And so then they can come to our website and get the activity workbooks or the audiobooks or things like that. But the goal with these workbooks is really just to facilitate kind of applied learning, right? So you read about in the book, let's do a word search, right? Or let's do a bingo game as we read the books together, and you can incentivize the kids to listen along a little more by putting a piece of candy every time they hear the right word of, spontaneous order, right? You get M&M on spontaneous order. So again, that's where we're trying to just find other ways to provide value to families and say, this stuff is so critical. Schools aren't teaching it. Teachers don't understand it. They're not taught this stuff themselves. It's up to parents. And so we just want to be like that supplement, if you will, just to say, you're not alone. We've got content and curriculum that'll help you. Here you go. Have fun. Let us know how it goes. We're there to help you.
That's cool. Well, by the way, real quickly before you ask your question, Joey, we created Connor a link. Right now, if you haven't had the chance to read the Tuttle Twins, go to wealthwatchwallstreet.com/Tuttle Twins. It's Tuttle Twins. And you can get access to all the books that Connor's talking about. All right, go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what I love about what you just mentioned was that no matter what a parent's situation is, if they are currently forced to keep a 9-to-5, if they're venturing into entrepreneurship, or they've had their own business for years and years and years, the real, where the rubber meets the road is that we cannot abdicate educating our children. Mm-hmm. We cannot hand that to somebody else. It's the same thought process that we talk about with the Wall Street mindset, is that nobody cares about your money the way you do, right? Putting your money with Wall Street and assuming that that person is going to do a better job of building your wealth than you would is a false idea. It's been hammered into your mind since you can even begin to think, but it's false. And the same is true with educating your children. So the reason why we connect so well with you is that we are about taking personal responsibility, and educating your children is so important. So thank you for what you do with the Tuttle Twins and with everything.
Well, we're having a blast. I mean, honestly, the best part of doing this is it's just fun, right? Because like when you're helping kids and parents love you when you're trying to help their kids. And for me, it's like a broader philosophical thing, right? Like I think these ideas are so critical to teach the rising generation. But man, and we translate these books into like a dozen languages. And so I'm always getting people sending me photos from like, Uganda and Italy and Brazil and all this, like reading our books in their language. And it's just like, it's crazy, but it speaks to this problem that there's such a void of teaching young people these ideas. And even the parents who like believe in kind of free market ideas and the ideas of freedom and so forth, they want to teach their children, but they were like me years ago, where I was like, I don't know how to, here I am, like I run a think tank full time, and I come home and my kids are like, Dad, what did you do today? I'm like, how do you talk to an 8-year-old about eminent domain, right? Like, how do you boil that down in a way where they can understand, oh yeah, I typed on the computer, right? Like I did stuff. But no, I wanted to talk to my kids about these ideas. I wanted them to grow up understanding the way the world works. And when we're at the grocery store, why are there 18 kinds of potato chips, right? Like let's talk about the way this stuff works. But I lacked the language to kind of, talk to my kids about that. And so as we've worked on this project, it's been fun because a lot of parents have really latched onto that same idea. I get emails all the time from parents that are like we were just having mind-blowing conversations that I didn't even have in college, right? But I am talking to my kids about the Federal Reserve and inflation and all this and they get it, because they have that like backdrop of the story to kind of contextualize it for them. So I honestly just have a blast. This is like a side hustle for me because I run my think tank full time and then some. But it itself is almost this full-time endeavor just because we're doing so much now, but it's so gratifying to see so many families really catching on.
Well, and don't you always resonate with the fact that the teachers learn more than the student, right? And I think, have you seen that with the parents as they are sharing these ideas with the kids? Have you come across parents who are like, well, I really, be honest, didn't know anything about this, somehow came across your books through a friend recommendation or whatever, and I didn't even understand what the creature of Jekyll Island even really meant. I didn't understand how the food truck fiasco, what that really meant when it relates to regulation and the government's intervention into the marketplace, how that impacts us. Are you seeing parents learning along the way, even at a higher level, obviously, than the kids?
Literally every day, literally, not embellishing here at all. Every day we get social media posts and emails, multiple, from parents saying exactly this. And it's crazy because for us, it was like, let's make a kids book. And then let's make a kids book series after that. And here we go. But it was always about the kids. And it was never intentional that the parents themselves would be like this secondary audience. But, if I were to give Economics in One Lesson, the book by Henry Hazlitt, to an adult, your average homeschool mom or working dad, professional, whatever, they probably wouldn't read it, right? Because it's harder to understand a little bit, kind of the older English style. I mean, not old, but, is more formal and bigger words than we're used to today. And it's it's not a thick book, but it's a book. It's hefty. It's substantive. The likelihood that the average parent is going to read that is very low. But here, when you give them the food truck fiasco, upon which that book is based, the same ideas, and it's reading time with the kids, so it's quality time, it's fun pictures, it's the story. All of a sudden, the defenses are down, right? Or that barrier, that threshold has gone down to educate the adult, to talk to the parent about the same ideas. And so we see literally every day. It's so hilarious because this was not intentional at all. And yet the parents are like, my gosh, I never learned that in college, or like, I never understood this stuff before. It's so helpful. So that to me is just an amazing thing, because here we have like a vehicle to really introduce these concepts to so many people and even like build this pipeline, right? Because as they read our books, then they can do our free market curriculum. And then once they do our free market curriculum, maybe, we're going to build an entrepreneurship kind of class that the kids and the parents can do. And maybe from there, we pass them on to a recommended organization. Like, hey, your kid's older now, go do an internship at this great, organization. So those are the things we're trying to think through right now, how to really leverage that community really well.
Okay, so you just kind of gave me a good segue here, but I'm listening to you. I'm driving down the road. I'm working out, whatever. I'm a concerned parent. I know that these things are important. If you had to give me kind of a step-by-step to walk me from, hey, I know nothing, to having a really clear path to getting my kids up to speed, and subsequently myself, right, as a secondary piece, what would be the steps you would take?
That's a good question. We're all busy, right? Like, it's very hard to like sit down with your kids for several hours and do this like heavy curriculum and stuff like that. So what we've tried to do is really make it so that a lot of this is on autopilot. So the books, Tuttle Twins books, for example, are meant to just be picked up by the kid and read. And yeah, at the end, we have discussion questions, right? We have the definitions of the new words so the parents can sit down at the end. If they're not going to read the book with their kids, which is fine, you've got kind of a conversation to have. Well, tell me what you learned about this and what are your observations about that? Really simple. Doesn't take a lot of time. Certainly if it's the adult who's wanting to learn themselves, then just read along with the kid and you're going to be exposed to all kinds of new words. One of the things that we launched last fall, I think, takes it to the next step that I would suggest for parents wanting to learn. We launched an economic curriculum. We call it Free Market Rules, which is kind of a double entendre because it's the rules of the free market, but it's also, the free market rules, right? And so that's at freemarket, www.tuttletwins.com. And what the way we built this, we actually are trying to solve this exactly problem you brought up, because what we do is every parent who signs up for that, week one, no matter what, if you signed up last year or today, you always get like, the unit 1, lesson 1. Everyone starts at the beginning. What are needs and what are wants, and why are they different? And so what we do is every week we give them 5 pieces of content. We say, here's some introductory material for you about this week's topic. It could be an article on Fee's website, right? Or it could be a video from, some college or something like that. Some type of information for the parent to get up to date, really simple on that week's topic. And then we give them an asset for the young children and an asset for the young children. This could be a game, an activity, a short story, right? Because we want the whole family to be learning that topic together that week. So then what we do is we call them dinner conversation starters. They're really just discussion questions. But it's like, after you've learned this, after the kids have done their little activity, you can all talk about it together. You have a common language for that idea. Here's some questions to talk about together. And then finally, we give them what we call go deeper material. So if the parent is like, hey, that was really interesting, I want to learn more, great. Here's an essay. Here's a chapter of this book. Here's a video seminar from this guy talking about it. And so week by week by week, we kind of hold their hands walking all the way through free market economics, where we start getting into much more complex ideas, but they have this foundation where as a family, they've been learning together. And we do use kind of more simplified terminology, and we're helping them understand these things rather than like a textbook teaching them, supply and demand curves or anything like that. We're trying to make this relatable and fun. But coming out of that, man, the parents and the kids who are doing this together learn so much, but just incrementally, right? Because you're just doing this, bit by bit, week over week. And so those are the things that we're trying to figure out right now, because we recognize that parents are well-intentioned. They want to do this stuff, but they're busy. They don't have a ton of time, but they do want to learn themselves. And so we're trying to find these little like bite-sized, projects and things that can appeal to precisely those kinds of people.
That's very cool, because we always love to give a plan, right? How to apply this concept. How do we apply the theory that we have? Because we want our kids to be in a better position than we were. And for me, that's really easy, because I came out of a really, a loving family, even though it was broken, but there was no talk about economics. And I couldn't even spell economics, to be honest. I still have to Google it to be able to get it out. I will say this about your books. They're easy to read. I have sat down and read those with my 7-year-old, even though he now can read most of it. I explained a couple of the words after looking them up, but it is definitely very easy to get involved. So you were giving a plan there. I love that. By the way, we're going to put that link that Connor just mentioned inside the wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/Tuttle Twins. So if you didn't catch it, you can go there and grab it. Well, Connor, are you willing to come in and do a live Q&A and let some parents ask you questions and talk a little bit deeper about the books and other things you got going?
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Man, I would love that, because we are, Joey, getting ready to launch kind of a series on how to get our kids engaged, not only in entrepreneurship, but also teaching them the process of, setting up a mindset that is creating cash flows, teaching them the things that we're learning on the podcast, whether it's in real estate, business ownership, lending, whatever it may be. And I think this just goes so well together with it. So Connor, thank you again for coming on the show. We really wish you the best in the next couple of things you got going, and look forward to talking to you soon on the Q&A.
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And as always, thank you for listening to the show. Have a wonderful day. Catch you on the next episode.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.